Hello, I think that's us live on air now. Apologies for being a few minutes late. We had a wee technical issue with Mark's camera. We had to switch it off and back on again, the old trick. It took us 10 minutes to realise that. But anyway, it's nice to be joined by Mark again, because it's been a while since I last chatted with you. And can you confirm this time that you really are in Australia and not hiding upstairs?
Yes, just a moment.
Yeah. Did you see the look on Stacey's face? I have replayed that so many times when you appear and Stacey goes, "Wow."
That's right. Yeah, no, I can confirm I'm in Australia. I've got the kangaroo parked outside.
Yep.
And I've just wrestled a couple of snakes on the veranda. So all good. A normal Friday night. So
yeah. I must apologize.
Friday evening here.
Yeah, I must apologise. I was looking for the Australian national anthem, and I couldn't find it, or Waltz and Matilda. I believe that there was was there not a referendum a few years back in Australia to do with the fact that you were having the chance of voting for your national anthem? And Waltz and Matilda was one of the options. Am I right in thinking that?
No, I don't think you are. We used to have many decades ago your anthem as our national anthem, which became a little bit sort of obsolete in the sense of how Australia was evolving as its own nation.
Yep.
And we have an Australian national anthem that's called
Advanced Australia Fair. Yeah,
and
heard it many times.
I'm actually going to get Eric Jose to sing it for us one time, because he gives such a great rendition of other countries' national anthems, and so we all deserve to hear that, don't we?
Yeah.
Right? So, but also Waltzing Matilda is called our national song, as distinct from the anthem.
Yeah.
So that gets sung on different official and unofficial occasions.
Yes.
But we do actually have a song that is sort of an unofficial anthem called We Are One. And it's a song written and was very successfully released quite a long time ago. And it really engages Australia's true original Australians, which are our Indigenous population, who are the true owners of this land, which we're part of. So that doesn't have an official category, as far as I'm aware, but is often played by those more connected to a more inclusive Australia.
That's interesting.
And it's actually, I think it might be officially called I Am, You Are, We Are Australians. I think that's actually what I Am, You Are, We Are Australian. I think its official title. But the anthem is Advanced Australian Fair. And there's much of that that's very appropriate. It's really more about being a good person and the nature of our country, and just, being reasonable and fair about things. That's really what it's about. So I think most people like that. So.
Yeah, certainly I love watching the cricket, as you know. And I was watching all of last month and into the middle of February, the Big Bash League, the Big Bash cricket.
Yes.
And quite a few of the batsmen, on their bat, they had stickers depicting Aboriginal art.
Yeah.
And often it would be like several decorative circles, and it was to do with, the inclusion of everybody.
Yeah.
Just what you were talking about there. Certainly here in the UK, a lot of people, even English people, are not big fans of God Save the Queen. The other people, because it talks about send her victorious, as in, send her victorious in subjugating the rest of Britain and the UK, which the Scots in particular Scots, Irish and Welsh take offence to. But also it's when England play, they play God Save the Queen. Well, God Save the Queen is not the English anthem. It is the British anthem.
Oh,
And
okay.
therefore, England is very similar. They have, in effect, a song, and it is, of course, I don't know if you're familiar with Jerusalem and did those feet in ancient times. And that's why they sing that one, you know. But certainly when it comes to anthems, I don't know if you watch any of the Six Nations rugby. But for me,
I have, yeah.
For me, the top two anthems are the French and the Italians.
Oh,
I think they're rousing tunes. You know, I can, you know, I sing along. I basically sing along to all the anthems. Obviously, you know. I mean, hell, I've even sang the Star Spangled Banner. And I did it in tune and on time.
That's right. Hey, speaking of anthems, though, just quickly before we go on to topics specific to our reason for a call, is that last year, I think it was, we had the World Cup Rugby League World Cup in Australia. And there are a lot of nations who play rugby league as well. And the very strong and up-and-coming nations are from the Pacific. And so particularly countries like Samoa and Fiji Tonga, and Papua New Guinea, and seriously, their national songs and anthems they sing on the field before the start of the game are just about bring you to tears, right? They're just unbelievable. And even the New Zealand national anthem, which I forgive my New Zealand friends that I forget the name of it, but they sing it both in English and then they sing it in Maori. Oh. So it's a very inspiring tune. So so it's great. And I think, you know, you're right about God Save the Queen. I guess I mean, with due respect to Queen Elizabeth, I'm not really a fan of anthems that actually are trying to praise a person, even though I suspect it's more praising or lauding the crown rather than the individual.
Yes, yep.
I think there's probably a deeper message you could portray in your anthem than just saving the king or the queen or the king, as the case might be.
Yeah, I think that's why Jerusalem is so popular. I mean, it was a song that I learned at school, and when we used to have at our school, a very, very staunch Catholic school, the whole purpose of the school I went to was actually to skim off the best students and to get them to become priests, to invite them to become priests. I know you're amazed that they never invited me, but that's how it went. And
but they did say the best students, right?
Yes, and so some of the masses that they did were completely in Latin.
Oh, God.
Yeah, the whole mass was in Latin. But what would happen is if at any time during the mass we didn't get to sing Jerusalem, at the end of mass, all the fourth and fifth years would all stand up and start singing Jerusalem. Completely improvised, completely off their own back. I remember the number of times the guy on the piano would suddenly rush across to join in, because it was such a good thing to do. But yes, the French, of course, they often criticise or have a little dig at the UK, but England in particular, to the fact that we in the UK, we are all subjects of the Queen. Whereas the French, they are not subjects; they are citizens, and we, they like to put that sort of distinction, don't they? And have their strikes and their all their kind of carry-ons when it comes to anything that they don't like. They just strike, and there's not a lot that the French government can do about them, so they just concede. And
all those differences and opinions are resolved on the football pitch, right? That's all that matters. So that's as bad as tough it needs to get.
Yep. Anyway, so I posed you two questions, an easy one and a difficult one. Which one would you like to go with first? You choose.
The one about I don't know how we keep getting a mention on your program, but the one about Eric Ose. So
yeah.
Maybe you might like to repeat the question for the benefit of people watching.
Yeah, it was just the fact that well, first of all, I mentioned him in a video early on in the week to say that he did a live, he did it all by himself, which was very good. Took all the questions, answered them. if you remember, we sent him when he first started doing them. We sent him a few suggestions and said, look, you need to do this, that, and the other. And I think he's taken it all on board and listened and is rapidly improving. He got a little bit of a one of our fellow YouTubers, Perplex, got a little bit annoyed with him. Whether I don't know the sort of ins and outs of that. But just to set the record straight, I don't know about you, Mark, but I subscribe to Eric Jose. I subscribe to Fresh Start Monday, Perplex QT, Casey Martinez. We haven't heard anything from her for a long time. Then we've got Rubber Ducky. We've got a whole load of YouTubers out there. We've got some that have Ali Apperson, of course, and we've got some people that just put out a video of stuff that they've come across, which is very good. There's a Mill Billy Jeeves. I've listened to this stuff by Richard Boyd. I don't know if you've come across the Richard Boyd stuff.
Yeah, he's the guy about the car, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, regardless of whether there were 1 cars, 2 cars, 3 cars. I mean, it sounds like a children's song, doesn't it? There was 1 green Rav, there were 2 green Ravs, there were 3 green. But putting that aside,
1 green Rav could accidentally fall. Yep, I know. Sorry, keep going. I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. It was just that I get the guy's passion. I truly get that we're all in this, not for our own self-glorification. We are all in this to try and do whatever little bit we can to raise awareness of both Stephen Brendan's plight, justice for Teresa Holbeck. I know that's a theme that you keep going on about, because that's in speaking with you, that's one of the things that you've always put first is, justice for Teresa Holbeck, justice for Stephen Brendan, and it's very important to put her first. But
I'll tell you why I think
go for it.
They're not mutually exclusive, by the way.
No,
but the reason to put Teresa and her family first is because there's no return for her.
Yes.
At least with Stephen and Brandon, as horrific as what they've had to endure and their families, there is still the possibility of hope and freedom. Now, as I say, one isn't in exclusion of the others, but there's no coming back for Teresa. So
correct.
It's really, really sad, the circumstances surrounding this case, that I think I may have mentioned in other discussions. I have serious doubt whether the Holbach family and Teresa herself will ever really get true justice in this matter. Not for a lack of will at the moment, but for a lack of will at the time. That is, a will to properly investigate a whole range of potential suspects and gather the appropriate evidence to support those investigations. There's probably, by my accounting, there's probably 7 or 8 people who should have been suspects. By the way, suspects doesn't mean they did it. It just means that they had the potential to be that, and the police didn't investigate them at all, not at all. And the lack of investigation then means now, short of some absolute confession or disclosure or that we haven't yet seen, I don't know that they'll ever, beyond circumstantial evidence, ever be able to pin it on someone. That's my concern.
I share your concern. I would just point out, though, that when it comes to Kathleen Zellner, I think we're dealing with a very rare species, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
What's that famous song? The female of the species is more dangerous than the male. You remember that one? Was it Catatonia?
Not really.
No. I just made that bit up. But anyway, Kathleen Zellner has she not sort of had 18, 19 convictions overturned, the majority of which she has found out who the real killer is, and therefore she's actually, done more sort of investigating and finding out who the real killer is than a lot of investigators in America. You know, she's one of their top investigators.
Yes, and Paul, interesting. I think you've mentioned this point in past videos about, you know, in Stephen Avery's first conviction and ultimately exoneration, and the identification clearly of Gregory Allen. I'm not sure Gregory Allen ever got prosecuted for that crime, did he?
He never did, no.
Now, he was already in prison, but
yep.
For Penny Bernstein and her family, don't you think it would have been the proper thing to do?
It would have been.
At least to attempt to prosecute him?
Well, yes, but there's a big problem there, isn't there?
Well, we know why.
If they'd have investigated Gregory Allen, they would have uncovered all the things that they did wrong, for which Peg Lautenschlager decided to exonerate them. And which, of course, in order for Steve to defend himself and get that 400,000 to defend himself, 160 of that went to Glenn and Kelly, and then Jerry and Dean got the 240. But the only in order to get that money, Steve had to sign the fact that he accepted that Manitowoc had no, you know, didn't do anything wrong. And of course, it was supposedly Dennis Vogel's insurance that paid up, because there was still this, it still had this value to it. Well, isn't it strange that Mark Gundrum had a check for 450 or 460? I don't quite know why there's a discrepancy there, but there. And I know you're an accountant guy, and you're saying, well, you know, if you're going to say this stuff, you have to provide the documents. And I don't think there are documents to say that, you know, this 400,000 came from the 450,000. But yeah, for me, getting back to it, it's the investigation side of it.
That's true, though. I think that's true, though, because the funds that did flowed from the private civil settlement.
Yeah.
And which also led to the quite appropriate question. Well, the state were prepared to compensate Stephen 450,000 or 425, I forget what the number was. Yeah. What happened to that money? You know, why didn't the state step in and still give him that money? Because, you know, irrespective of the matter pursuant to Teresa, he was still wrongfully convicted.
That's right.
For the first matter. So they just took a free pass and didn't bother to deal with that matter at all.
Yeah.
But so that led us, we're at this part of the conversation because it leads back to the issue of, will Teresa Halbach and her family ever receive justice? Because it's not, even though Kathleen Zellner has, you know, she's publicly stated she wants to identify the real perpetrator, but she's not a prosecutor. She can only bring forward evidence. It's going to be up to the state to decide whether, in their minds, there's that sufficient evidence to prosecute someone. And the reason why I don't think that'll happen is, one, you know, a lot of the trails are cold, and secondly, the proper, full and thorough investigation of such other persons will reveal what I think we already all know about the behaviour of law enforcement, or certain law enforcement, surrounding these cases. So I think they'll be keen to just let it pass through. And so there we go. Teresa and her family will never properly see justice. That's my feelings anyway.
Sure. I mean, my hope would be that now that Kathleen Zellner has, it was one thing for her to be told by people, you know, you've got to be aware that Wisconsin are not your normal, you know, the law enforcement in Wisconsin are not your normal, you're not dealing with your normal police, attorneys and Department of Justice. You are dealing with you know, a particularly renowned, I mean, Wisconsin is renowned throughout the world as being, you know, one of the places where there is a lot of corruption. But she's now finding the evidence thanks to stuff like the Mark Williams phone call. I'm sure you saw that tweet where she put about the fact that, let's hope that we get a proper judge to listen to this, you know, the next part of the proceedings for Steve. a proper judge makes proper decisions, not one that's completely and utterly biased. Anyway, sorry, I
No,
just
that type of approach of that judge and other judges in this history of this case unravels our confidence in justice. I mean, there is nothing more serious than citizens not accepting that justice is happening. And so it's irrespective of your particular view about Stephen or Brendan or any other accused, your primary effort should be focused on upholding the system of justice, because the system of justice may in fact allow guilty people go free. We know that. But the system of justice should also make sure that innocent people aren't found guilty.
Yeah.
And, we want to err on the side of the latter rather than the former. So, a judge's role is so important. And, they could dislike Stephen or not like this and not like that, but that shouldn't in any way sway the way they administer the system of justice. And it's a really chronic ill if they allow that to be the normal behaviour.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if the investigation had been a genuine investigation where Calumet County did the investigating purely by themselves, without any involvement from the crackerjack detectives from Manitowoc being involved, and had everything been done in the case properly, then whether Stephen Avey at trial was found guilty or not, you could accept that. But when you look at all the, to use the proper legal term, the wonkiness that went on there, then it's as you say, sometimes you'll get somebody who you're not sure whether they're guilty or not. For example, our good friend the Dude, who is actually on the chat, he's at Haver Central, and I would just like to point out that if I have done, looking back years to come, if I have done anything good in this case, it is to simply introduce to the American public the word havering. So I take full credit for that.
Well, I'm not going to let you do that, because I think you're actually stealing something there that's not appropriate, because you may recall, obviously you want to forget this, but you may recall very early on in the piece when I first met you online. I mean that in a business sense, not any other way, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That I mentioned to you the Scottish band, the Proclaimers song 500 Miles.
Yes.
And I said to you, can you tell me what to haver means? Because it's a part of that song.
Yes.
And you sort of gave me a bit of an answer, but I'll ask Eunice, your wife, because you're not a born and bred Scotsman.
Yes.
And then what arose out of that was you asking your lovely wife that question, and she giving that now famous quote.
Yep.
That is regularly replayed by our dear friend Mr. Eric Jose about what to haver means.
Yeah, it's starting to get worn out, isn't
it? Never. No. So I'm going to take the credit for instigating the question that gave rise to the answer that has served to give many people much entertainment over the last 12 months, at your expense, I should hasten to add.
Which
and quite rightly, as you say, has caused people to now understand what the word to haver means, which, according to the Eunice Dictionary, means to talk a lot of nonsense, to talk a lot of rot, to carry on, and which is, how it attaches to you.
Yeah, I would just point out, of course, that to haver in Scotland, it is a term of endearment. When you hear it in the context of the song, it's if I get drunk, well, I know I'm going to be the man that gets drunk next to you. And when I haver, in other words, once I've had a few drinks and I'm telling you how much I love you and all that kind of stuff, in order to get my own way, it is to do with, there is an affection there. It's not just just havering for the sake of it. There's basically there's alcohol involved.
I knew that was the key part of the recipe, alcohol.
But also, I just wanted to point out that in case people missed the start. That the whole purpose of today's chat was I instigated it, and I said to Mark, I said, look, why don't we do a chat? But on this occasion, do one that is on the Aussies' terms, so that it's them that can join us. I don't know if many have joined, but just for the fact that you've joined us, and it's a good time of the evening for you. What time is it there in Australia?
On East Coast, on East Coast time, where I am on summertime, daylight saving time, it's a little after 8 o'clock at night now.
Yep.
On Friday night.
Yep. And you were telling me that you've managed to put all your kangaroos in the garage.
Yeah, parked them.
But you've parked them, fed the sharks.
The crocodiles are back in the pool.
Good.
And I'm just about to put a few shrimps on the barbie, as the Americans would like to call it. But I wanted to draw you back to your opening question, which we havered away from, which was focused on Eric Jose and other YouTubers.
Yes.
We're all thoughtful people, and we have a deep knowledge of the case. The work that Eric Jose does is just unbelievably breathtaking in terms of his commitment to revealing and exposing and engaging this story with everyone, which doesn't happen just because you own a camera and you like to have a chat. It happens because you've got the deep intellectual commitment and passion for this case or these cases and others, which he focuses on as well, not just Brendan and Stephen.
Yes.
And I've listened to many of the YouTubers. They're all great. They all have everyone has something to add to the story. Yep. They have different styles in doing it, but I'm always drawn back to Eric Jose's channel because of the way he does things. I mean, he will tell you that things go wrong from time to time, and perhaps everything's not perfect. But he's unbelievable. And in fact, it was his efforts that actually drew me into being involved like I am tonight.
Same here.
So I take my hat off to him. He's, he deserves a medal for what he does, as do many of the others, of course, as well. Yeah, and he does things respectfully and courteously, and that's really an important value to me. And and he upholds the principles of innocent until proven guilty and the presumption of innocence, and he doesn't encourage people to just go out there and make broad accusations about people. It's based on knowledge or based on good research. So I'd encourage anyone to listen to his channel, and anyone else who adopts a similar approach to Eric Jose, so on their channels as well.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, there's almost like a little bit of conservatism about him. He is quite conservative in what he talks about. He won't sort of try and sensationalize anything.
No, nor should anyone.
No. It's not a thing to sensationalize at all. Exactly.
And he's also one of the important characteristics of his style. He wants to engage the audience with the topic, whether they're new to the story or been around a long time.
Yep.
There's nothing about what he says or the style in which he says that is condescending or presumptuous. And you can see by the way his community of subscribers engage with him, that they find a huge amount of value in not just what he does, but the way in which he does it. And it's a good lesson to anyone else seeking to be a broadcaster of any type. It's all about credibility and research and humility. So he's got that in spades.
Yeah, although I would suggest that yes, when you think of the Harry Potter film Hermione, when she talks about Ron and Harry having the emotional range of a teaspoon, sometimes I must admit I can be like that, and I know most blokes can be like that. We're wired differently. Let's put it that way. We are definitely wired, whether we come from different places or not.
When you've got size 20 feet, some of your emotion falls to the bottom, right?
Yes.
And that's always a bit of a challenge. So, and he lived on about 3 hours sleep, from what I can tell, and a dozen bottles of Dr. Pepper.
Yeah,
that's kind of the Eric Jose, formula.
I liked one of Kathleen Zellner's tweets. I think it was a reply, and somebody put, "Do you ever sleep?" And Kathleen Zellner simply replied with, "Sleep is overrated." and I'm thinking, yeah, I bet she's one that burns the candle at both ends as well, you know. But yes, I mean,
wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall in her office? Not so much about the factual aspects of what goes on, but just the kind of commitment she has to discovery and effort. That's the thing that's so breathtaking about what she does. You know, she's just so committed to doing things and doing it well, and she's got a good grasp. She likes to consult with others. She doesn't pretend to have, you know, a mortgage on all the best ideas. And yeah, she's a huge, not only obviously extremely good at what she does, but she's a huge credit to her profession.
I mean,
I'm sure is encouraging others to join the profession because of just the way she does her thing. Yeah,
as we see in particularly in series 2, of course, she finds out who are the best experts when it comes to the various aspects of the case, and then she goes to them and she asks them for their opinion on what to do. You know, she doesn't presume that she knows everything. She goes out, gets the best people, and they come back and they explain to her. You know, but getting back to Erekose, I've obviously I've met you. You're just over 6 foot tall. I've seen pictures of you alongside the dude. He must be about 7 foot tall.
Yeah, I actually need a little, you know, stool to have a chat with him. Stand up and, you know, so he is big. He has to have when he gets on a plane, he has to have the exit seat. You know, so.
Well, I'm going to say something, and luckily I know that I'm safe from 5,000 miles away, and I'll never get to be in the same room as him, because that would be sort of, he would just like tear my head off or something, you know.
Are you sure he's not going to enter from the side or something?
I'm absolutely sure he's not here because he ain't got a passport.
Over your shoulder.
He ain't got a passport, so he can't. But I just wonder how somebody who is so good, you know, and we both praise him. We both started doing this because of him. I remember his video where he said, you know, please do your videos. Let's promote so many people doing videos. When somebody is so good when it comes to making a murder, how can somebody be so delusional when it comes to Captain Crunch? I just don't get that. I just don't. Let's see if he is he there. No, I don't think he is. Haven. He's all over the map.
I think he's always somewhere. So
yeah, he's there. He's there. Yeah, Haven on as usual.
I remember last year, I think it was around June, not long before the rally, I saw that you and he had a legal battle in a court, and the judge was, you know, pretty tough on both of you, and ultimately it went to the jury of public opinion, and I think you won by 1 vote, wasn't it?
I was absolutely amazed. I mean, I you know, that 1 vote for me was a landslide, because I honestly thought that I would be absolutely hammered. I thought I didn't know that anybody would have been voting for me, because, you know, like, I'm promoting it on my little YouTube channel, which is tiny in comparison to all the support that Erekose has. So I was expecting it to be an absolute landslide, and I won by 1 vote. I mean, that's, you know, that's a little bit like, you know, Newcastle United of the First Division getting beaten by little Hereford United from League 5. You know, I mean, that you know, you have to put wins into context when you've got that such a bigger gap. You know, that was an absolute hammering that I gave the dude.
Yeah, well, you know, he hasn't really recovered from it, and I was a bit disappointed as a viewer that, as a consequence, that I had to listen to "God Save the Queen," a la Ludwig von Kose. So
I thought, you see,
that was a punishment for us all, not just for him. So
you see, the problem was that judge, he was like the worst bits of Willis and Fox. You know, he was just He moved the goalposts right at the last minute.
Really?
It was typical Judge Willis and Fox. It was, well, you see, the thing is, I came from it from the point of view that all I had to do was argue from the point of view that Captain Crunch was not British, which was easy enough. But then I had to then go further, a bit like Zelna, and prove that Captain Crunch wasn't British by proving that he was American.
Oh, I see.
Which was a bit tricky because, yes, he does have a crew who's some of them, I mean, his arch enemy is John the Foot, although that could be that he's probably operating around about the Caribbean, and John the Foot is from the sort of Cajun area of America. Anyway,
what's that I hear? I think that's the crunch-free zone bell ringing.
What it was mainly about, though, was in the farcical way in which we did our debate about Crunch, it was also to try and mirror and parody the farcical way in which Stephen Brendan's cases are being handled, and we tried to sort of, as I say, parody or mirror what was going on there with some of the stuff that we did. It was that's really what it was all about. And yeah, just to let off a bit of steam, I mean, Eric Ose, when he's live chatting, he doesn't swear at all, really. You get him on a private chat, and it's different. It's the industrial language comes out then. As I say, I just hope that I never have to face him face to face in a room, because he'll just be like, "Come here, Capaldi, I'm going to tear your head off because I don't like your head."
Hey, I wanted to mention something.
Yes, please do.
For the viewers or the listeners, and I apologize in advance in case you've already heard me say this before, but I've been fortunate enough already to go to Wisconsin twice.
Yes.
First last time in June for the rally, which was just an amazing experience, just breathtaking experience. And anyone, whether they're in any part of the world, if there's an opportunity for you to go to the rally this year, you really should. I know it's a long way and expensive for most, and then I went back again in August, 2 months later, because I felt this need to go back and be connected and understand lots of parts about it. But one thing was always clear to me was in this matter is that is the very nature of the Avery family and the Dassey family. They're just everyday folk. There's no particular thing about them that you wouldn't just adore. They're a good family. They love each other. They work hard. They try hard. It's a family you can be, families, I should say plural, that you could be very proud of to call your own. And I've met, as many people have, but I've met Dolores, Stephen's mum, and Alan, his father. I've had a beer with Alan and Stephen's brothers, Chuck and Earl, and obviously his sister, Barbara, who's Brendan's mum, and Brendan's dad, Peter, who Barbara and Peter aren't together, haven't been for a long time. And I met all them. I've spoken to Stephen on the phone a few times from Warpond Correctional Institution. I've spoken to Brendan as well. And any number of people. Now, I only mention that not for sort of naming names, but just to say that I've really engaged with the whole community that is the story, and it's really, really easy to see how this, as Stacey Seabrook sings, how this could be you or could be me, right? So, I have absolutely, without any fear of changing my mind, I know that they're innocent, and they've been, not only are they innocent, they've been knowingly wrongfully convicted. They are great, right? The word great's not right. They're just a good family. They're all, if you think about Stephen's plight, like I think he's 56 years old. I think he's 56. And if you deduct off the first 20 years of his life and call that his youth. For the 36 years of his adult life, he's been in prison, wrongfully convicted for, let's see now, 31 going on 32 years of his 36 adult years. But he's still, you know, he still is strong and fighting for his innocence and fighting for his family and fighting for what's right. And likewise with Brendan, who's been in prison now since, well, he's been arrested since 2006, so we're going into his 13th year of incarceration. So, in fact, today in Australia, the 1st of March, is the 13th anniversary of his so-called confession. Again, he's a very strong young man. He's got a wonderful supportive family in Barbara and Peter, and obviously all the other members of the more extended Dassie and Tardik family who support him, and everyone around the world. So these are really fantastic people, and I feel very privileged to have met them. And like everyone else, just will continue to fight for their freedom.
Sure.
And I guess there's a lot of Australians would already know. Actually, there was a lot of media this week, in Australia about the Court of Appeals decision. Very public media stuff about that. For some bizarre reason, a lot of the media, not just in Australia but around the world, kind of overplayed what had actually happened. They kind of took a simplistic view that Stephen was being granted an appeal, which we know is not true. He's just been given a green light on a road towards an appeal.
Yes.
But nonetheless, it's all very positive and for all the right reasons. But if there's any people listening from Australia, I think New Zealand too, I'm not sure when the New Zealand trip's on, but Laura Nyrider and Stephen Drizzen, who represent Brendan, and David Rudolph is the lawyer in the staircase story. They're touring Australia in March, and I'm not sure what tickets are left to go to see those, but there might be a few odd ones here and there. But if you get a chance to go there, and also I think they're going to New Zealand as well. I'm not sure whether that's before or after Australia. I would encourage people to try to go along. The tickets aren't excessively expensive, and it's a great way to show your support of these issues.
Absolutely. I mean, just getting back to that last issue. I mean, you've got obviously Laura Nyrider and Steve Drizzen. I've seen them already. I've seen Dean Strang once. I've seen Jerry Buting now twice. And I've seen David Rudolph once. And the fact that you've got David Rudolph there with Laura Nyrider and Steve Drizzen is quite interesting. How it was Jerry and David Rudolph in Amsterdam, but you've got Laura and Steve and David Rudolph. I must admit, I did have a bit of a chat with David Rudolph after the show because Jerry was very busy signing his book, so I had a chance to chat with David, and he's a really nice fella. I had a lot of time for David Rudolph, and I imagine that he'll be explaining a lot more about the owl theory when it comes to Mike Peterson. It's interesting, isn't it? That's one subject where me and the dude don't quite agree. I'm totally convinced in Mike Peterson's innocence. However, having said that, I've seen people put on look at this sort of body language stuff and say, well, his son looked decidedly dodgy a few times, and even Mike Peterson himself looked dodgy.
I think one of the things we all is that we need, and we're all capable of being guilty of it, we need to be very careful that we don't rush to judgment on someone just because of the way they act or behave or look.
Yes.
We might regard someone as being a bit odd because of the style of their speech or whatever. Now, that might lead you to some conclusion, but I think I can tell you, I've been around on planet Earth long enough to tell you many cases of situations where you thought, oh, that person's guilty for sure, only to be proven to be wrong. So as much as you might be angry about something or feel compelled to have a view, we need all, I would suggest, we all need to be careful not to rush to judgment about people, allow the facts unfold, provided the facts can stand the test of veracity. But appearances can be very deceiving. And there's plenty of case history to show you that, to try someone in the court of public opinion before the real court applies it is extremely damning and unfair, and not in the spirit of, good community. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. I think, as I pointed out in my video, as truthers, equally abhorrent to us is both the thought that public opinion could lock an innocent person away, as it did with Steve, but also that for some reason innocent public opinion could free a guilty person. Both those scenarios are totally against what we think. When it comes to if somebody's guilty, then lock them away. Don't execute them. I have a problem with that, and I'm watching now I watched the Ted Bundy tapes. I'm now watching Mind Hunter, in which they're using criminals to actually get to know them, to learn from them, to try and make sense of how crime has changed and altered. But getting back to my initial question, like I said, I posed two questions, an easy one and a difficult one. The easy one we'll come on to. The difficult one, the dude we've more or less dealt with. He'll continue to grow his channel. Laura will continue to grow her channel. It's all good stuff. We've got some personalities out there, haven't we? And they're all passionate about the case. I still get people, obviously they come to me if they've just watched Making a Murderer the first time with questions, for example, along the lines of, why are Steve and Brendan still locked up? Why are those that framed him, why are they not put inside yet? Why have they not been arrested? I would just add that, as I said, one of the first things I ever did when I started emailing was to get hold of Nick Reamer at the Manitrot Police Department and say, why haven't you gone around and arrested the Lincoln Colburn for framing Steve? And he said, we don't have jurisdiction, a few other things, and rather than have a nice day or something like that, he just put take care.
Yeah.
So
out of that, did you have a question for me as to why that was the question? Why other people haven't been arrested?
Two part. Why are Stephen Avery and Brendan? Why are they still locked up? Why are they not out? Why hasn't the president pardoned them? And B, why haven't the ones that were actually involved in all of this? Why haven't they been locked up ages ago?
Okay, so let's deal with each of those parts. Well, firstly, criminal law, most criminal law that we're familiar with is a state-based law matter, and therefore the President of the United States doesn't have jurisdiction for pardons, only in federal law. So the only person that could pardon a state-based incarcerated person would be the governor, who's the head person in any particular state. And we've had a governor who's recently been replaced, but that previous governor had a very sort of, let's just call it for the sake of simplicity, tough on crime approach to that. And I don't think he pardoned anybody in his term as governor. And I think he was very public in saying that he wouldn't. That said, I just want to mention, I will try to be fairly concise, is that pardoning is a wonderful thing for the individual prisoner, but it shouldn't in any way give people the impression that meant that people would be happy just with that, because Stephen and Brendan maintain their innocence. So pardoning doesn't achieve that. Although if they were offered a pardon to them today, I'd tell them to take it, because they've suffered enough. And you can always pursue the innocence thing even if you're out of prison. So, so why the other people haven't been prosecuted or investigated is quite clear. One is that they don't want that to happen.
Yep.
And the only way they will be legally obliged to even contemplate that is if there is newly discovered evidence that can pass through the court system and indicate, one, that Stephen and Brendan are innocent, or at least their conviction is unreliable. And, importantly, there's a will of law enforcement to pursue the truth in this matter, which there, in my view, there isn't a will, and there won't be a will, because the roads to doing that will lead to places that those in power don't want to be discovered.
Yep.
And so there's a vested interest for many people for this matter not to be properly investigated, and hence, in many ways, that in part contributes to why, as I mentioned earlier in this discussion, that the Hallmarks will never find true justice, because the will to investigate this and the will to investigate it and what it will unravel and show will be something that is against the state's interests and individual persons in particular.
Yeah, I totally agree. By the way, I have no way of editing out that swear word that you just mentioned then.
What was that?
Hence.
Oh, all right. All right, yes.
I cannot edit that.
Our dear friend Thomas from Canada. Yeah.
Anyway,
oh, well.
Yes, I often liken it to the fact that it's like a game of football where, you know, your Kathleen Zellner is playing uphill. That it's the opposition, it's their ball, it's their pitch, it's their referee, everything's against her. And so obviously the reason why it was such an important decision by Riley was, and I took great comfort from what I would consider to be the tone of his writing. I thought
I did too.
Very interesting the way that he, you know, sort of basically was. I'll put it this way: it's a little bit like when we were kids. If another kid did something wrong to you, and it was really, you know, really something wrong that they did, you might go to your parent and say, look, such and such did this, and rather than the parent going and speaking to your, you know, your young friend that's done wrong, actually going to the parent and saying, look, you need to do something, and the parent then getting the kid and saying, you know, you've got to stop doing this, you've got to behave yourself. And to me, it was very much a case of, you know, Paul Riley is clearly superior to Judge Sukovich and is saying, get your finger out, get things done properly, stop procrastinating. You know, it is therefore ordered, further ordered. I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, because you know why? His mission, as best as I can judge that through his writings, is about honouring the system of justice.
Yes.
Right? And the system of justice provides for review. That is what makes the system as good as it is. Mm-hmm. And if there's any doubt, that review process should be entitled to be explained, and that's done through an evidentiary hearing under cross-examination and the rules of law about under oath and so on. Yep. So his ruling on that particular matter is really, to me, a statement of what you want judges to do. They need to stand behind the system of justice and uphold it, because if you start playing with it for the sake of political or other reasons, you take away the fabric of what underpins, you know, society. You know, we're a civil society. We live in a civil society because we believe rules are fair to have, and they are applied equally to everyone. You know, and we only accept rules to the extent that we regard them as to being fair. Now, if we have a judicial system, and I'm not saying this is true across everywhere, but if we have a judicial system in a microcosm that we have in Stephen and Brendan's case, that is prepared to undermine the justice system that we take as a tenet to good democracy and good civil society, yep. Then it's not a long reach to then say you run the risk, if you continue that, to create some degree of anarchy in the most extreme case, because people then don't regard the system as being fair. You know, fairness is something that we hold dearly, and we need it. Otherwise, you know, everyone will be, you know, behaving in an uncivilized and dangerous manner.
Yep.
So I know that's a lot of words to describe what you were talking about, Paul, but I was really pleased to read the detail of that ruling, and it gave me a lot of hope that there are good people at that level wanting this thing to properly follow its due process and appropriate course.
Oh, no, that was ideal. Mark, you're here to talk. I'm just here to haver.
That's right. Well, I wanted to actually talk about, if I may, because it's linked to this sort of theme, particularly for our Australian and New Zealand listeners, some of whom may not be as familiar with some of the issues. But gee whiz, there's a huge support. I've noticed in the last, let me see, 4 or 5 months in particular, the level of conversation about this matter.
Yep.
And also the number of people who come up to me and who know me and say, "Oh, Mark, I know you're involved in this stuff, and I'm really disgraced and disgusted about what I'm reading and watching on the Netflix documentaries and so on." Yep. There's a high level of indignation about all of this and a disbelief that this could happen, because if you take Brendan's case in particular, you know, Brendan's case, both in Australia and in Britain, would never find a day in court based upon what happened there. They would be thrown out straight away. And the other thing for people to be aware of, which I've gone on about many times in the past, is in the United States, love the United States dearly, but they've got the highest rate of incarceration in the world per head of population. That is, number of people in prison per head of population is higher than any nation in the world. There's over 2 million Americans in prison. It's approximately five times the rate of incarceration as it is in Britain or Australia. Are you telling me there are 5 times more criminals per head of population in America? No, there isn't. There isn't. There is something systemically wrong with the way in which law enforcement is approached at downstream in terms of convictions, incarceration. I mean, I'm no expert in these things, but my guess is probably at least a half to a third of the so-called prisoners could be better and more efficiently and more economically and more socially dealt with other forms of punishment or penalty than just chucking them in prison. I'm old enough to have been brought up as a little kid on the diet of American Westerns and all those sorts of things. And I know it sounds a bit corny, but I still really see this flavour of, you know, the wild, wild west, and the sheriff comes into town and locks people up, you know. Yep. And that's a bit of an overstatement, I guess, a little, but you could just got to say, how come? Why is it that a civilized, successful nation like the United States has so many people per head of population in prison? And then when you add to that number the fairly reliable statistic of wrongful convictions, it comes down to about 60,000 or 80,000 people in American prisons who are wrongfully convicted, many for very serious crimes. And understanding that this is going on, and if you like, the core causes of some of these issues is important to give context to the Brendan and Stephen cases and other such cases. Although Stephen's case is particularly unique because of the vendetta that was set out against him and his family that ultimately dragged Brendan in.
Yeah. I was just going to mention as well that highlight the fact that as well as obviously Australia and New Zealand having coverage of the decisions by Judge Riley, very much the same here. I noticed BBC and Sky. We have Sky, which is the equivalent of Fox. We had some of the major news outlets covering what had happened, which to me, I would sort of summarize it and put it in simplistic terms. It's as if the Stephen Avery Brendan Dassey case is this huge tanker sailing along in one direction, And now, because of Judge Riley, it hasn't done a U-turn yet, but it's started to turn. Would you agree with that? It's, this tanker, the direction it's going in has just started to turn slightly because of the judgment.
And and that particular judgment was based on a specific piece of evidentiary material.
Yes.
And there's a whole war chest of stuff that if we stop to think, we know about, but hasn't even had a day in court yet to be examined. I mean, all that sort of information that we've seen in Making a Murderer 2, that Kathleen Zellner has compiled regarding the volume of DNA, the issue about the examination of the bullet, issues about Teresa's day journal, issues about the withheld CD that was kept in Tom Fassbender's possession for 12 years, let alone these issues about bones, and the affidavits from various people that impeach a lot of the evidence that was used in court, affidavits from people saying they saw Teresa's car, 2 or 3 days after it was alleged, or the murder allegedly occurred. There's all that stuff which we've kind of all absorbed in the moment that it came by. It's just sitting in this war chest of ammunition that hasn't had a day in court. The weight of evidence is unbelievably overpowering. Bear in mind, of course, the way that evidence is designed to give rise to reasonable doubt that the convictions are unreliable. And it's all newly discovered evidence. It's not old evidence being rehashed. It's all newly discovered evidence. And the goal is to have a court say, we think that the weight of that is such that Stephen deserves a new trial. Just on that point, I could be shown to be wrong, obviously, but I'm wondering in my mind, will they even try to do that? Will they even try to retry him? And how are they going to do that successfully, given that their narrative is their narrative, they're locked into that. If the great bulk of all that gets disproven through the evidentiary hearing, or at least called into question is probably more the point, then you think, well, what are they going to go with next time round? What's going to be their ace in the pack or aces?
Yeah, I mean, I keep going on about this, but previous AG Schimmel, he just after Making a Murderer first came out, was interviewed on TV saying, "Well, I've phoned the Holbachs and assured them that if need be, we would retry Stephen Avery." But I'm with you. I would find it very, very strange if the state wanted to go down that route, because they would just get such a black eye, wouldn't they?
Exactly. I mean, they're just going to perpetuate what is already a huge mistake, and a deliberate mistake. And the state, particularly Mr. Schimmel, to constantly hide behind the good name of the Holbach and everything is just a disgusting. He was, when he was AG, using them as a shield to the truth, saying that all they were trying to do is to look after the interests of Mr. and Mrs. Holbach. Well, the interests of Mr. and Mrs. Holbach and their broader family are best served by allowing the truth to be revealed. Even if you don't believe the arguments, you should allow the process to be unfolded, because if Stephen and Brendan are so unbelievably guilty, then all the evidence that Kathleen and others compile should come to nothing, right? So what are you afraid of? And well, we know the answer. It's a bit rhetorical, but in truth, they just think that they try to tell the public that they're trying to help the Holbachs. Well, if I'm Mr. and Mrs. Holbach, am I going to be happy when I learn someone else went to prison on this matter? It was just a bit like Penny Bernstein learning that that Stephen went to prison when he wasn't the perpetrator. How would you feel that happened? And in Penny's case, in fairness to Penny, that's probably not the right word. She pointed out, notwithstanding all the dodgy, photo kit from what's his name,
Couché.
Vincent Van Couché, and notwithstanding that and the stuff that went on in the hospital that night, she was convinced to point out, Stephen, in the trial, that man over there, he's the one who did it, right? And how do you imagine she would have felt learning that was not to be true? And that's how I'm sure the Hallbachs would feel as well.
Yeah, I would just though point out that I have a huge question mark over Mike Hallbach. Not that I think that he was involved in her murder, but I'm convinced that, well, he's proven himself that he knew that Teresa was deceased when she was still only a missing person. So he would be the one member of the family that I would take issue with, because clearly he was hiding something, and it just beggars belief that the press didn't pursue that and say, what are you saying, Mike? You've just said grieving process.
Yes.
You know that she's dead.
Yes, I think most people would. I think most people would think that was an odd thing for him to say.
Yeah.
And I guess time will show through other means whether he was aware of Teresa's passing before then or not. But that the key issue for me is that the approach of the state to constantly hide behind the good name of the Hallbachs, and the grieving of the loss of their daughter, to say that was the reason to resist the proper process for justice, is just shameful that they should do that. They obviously are respectful to the Hallbachs, but the justice system is what the AG is supposed to uphold. Whether you like Stephen Avery or not, he's entitled to be part of the justice system. And that's the other part that troubles me, and I think troubles lots of people, that they're selective about who gets justice. That's, I guess, what I'm saying. And if you're not part of, if we don't like you, we don't care whether you get justice or not.
Yep.
So,
when you were in Wisconsin, when you've been there twice, did you ever go to Calumet County?
I did. I went out to the courthouse.
Yeah. Did you? Did you have a chat with Mark Wiegert? Because I suspect that he would be quite interested in swapping surnames with you. I wouldn't want to be in Mark Wiegert's shoes.
No, it's interesting, for many years he was quite quiet in the background on these matters, and last year he ran for pre-selection for the sheriff.
Yep.
Of Calumet. He lived, and he ultimately won and became sheriff.
Very narrowly.
Very narrowly. I'm pretty sure, if I've got this right, he's the candidate. The person he beat was someone from his own political persuasion. It wasn't, the Democrat or the Republican type thing.
Jeff Hebel. Jeff Hebel was his name.
That's right. Yes. And when I was there in August, that was the second trip, and I was traveling around the counties and other places, there were, the typical political billboards up, Wiegert for sheriff and so on. But what I think he would be wondering, it's one thing to fall from a low rung on the ladder. He's put himself high on the ladder. So if what I think will happen, his fall's going to be quite hard.
Yep.
But anyway, he's entitled to justice as well. So, let him have his appropriate justice like everyone else.
Sure.
And he hasn't been charged with anything, but I think in the court of morality, he must have trouble looking in the mirror.
Sure.
He and Tom Fassbender, in the way they handle Brendan. So, imagine the question I would like to ask both of them would now, with the benefit of hindsight, if you had a son, a 16-year-old son with, intellectual deficits, would you be happy that two police officers interviewed him in the way that they did, without a parent or without a lawyer present? Would you be happy that happened to your own son? That'd be a question I'd like to ask them.
Yeah. That's. He did put in his email to me that I hope one day to be able to answer all your questions, but I stand behind everything done in the case. And to stand behind everything done in the case when we're discovering now exactly what was done in the case. I think those were very foolish words on behalf of Mark
Yeah.
Reeves.
I think one of the things we always got to keep in mind in this is that we're looking back on something and also in the present now, because at the time all these events were unfolding from 2005, or I guess even earlier for that matter, but pretty much from 2005 to, let's say, 2015, when the Making a Murder 1 first came out, no one generally was pretty much aware of the Laura and what's the other lady filmmaker's name?
Laura Moira.
And Moira. They weren't really aware in any meaningful way what was going on.
No.
And I'm sure if they were had the benefit of crystal balling and realized what was going to happen 8 years later, or nearly 10 years later in a sense, they might have had a different view about things or a different attitude to their behavior. But so we now have the benefit of seeing that without them knowing it was going on.
Yes.
And currently we're now seeing it as it unfolds in real life with a really tight worldwide focus on the individual people. So it's an interesting sort of expose on human behavior. So
Slightly frivolous.
Yes, we can go there.
During Making a Murderer 2, we hear that Brendan thinks he's going to be released.
Yes.
And during a phone call, Scott Taddick and Barb say to him, right, is there, is there another way out of that place, And I thought it would have been great if Brendan said, well, there's the front door, but there's the tunnel that we've been digging.
Right.
And so what I was wondering is, when you've spoken to Steve, have you asked him how's the tunnel coming along? But you got to be careful because the calls are recorded, aren't they? So maybe you aren't able to mention that,
No tunnels or anything like that. Only when you go to the airport and they have signs up, please don't joke about security. We'll take you seriously. It's a bit like that when you're dealing with the corrections department. In a call to Stephen, which are recorded. I only talk to him about everyday stuff. I don't talk to him about his case or those sorts of things. I'm just talking to him about how he's going, especially that can be a question when you're locked up. But Brendan, I drove actually in my last visit. I drove with Brendan's father, Peter, who's very much he's like, Brendan's like mini me, well, not so mini me, or Peter. Down to Portage, which is the town in which Brendan's prison is in. His prison's called Columbia Correctional Institution. It's a very modern place. It's a long way for them to drive. It's like 2.5 hours each way. It's a 5-hour journey. And that was a wonderful insight for me. I offered to drive Peter down there, that's Brendan's dad, down there. And so I had 5 hours in the car with him. I couldn't, obviously, I'm not allowed to go in to see Brendan, so I hung around the town for a few hours while he visited with his dad. But the dedication both from his dad and also from his mum and Scott and others who are part of that Dassey family is fabulous, and a lot of other individual people who we hear about on Facebook who are friends of Brendan. A lot of supporters who are close to the family and who do have permission to visit. He's much loved, and again, gee whiz, a wise boy for what he's been put through. He's a huge credit to his mum and dad for how he is, and God, I can't imagine as a father having a child in prison, let alone one in there wrongfully convicted. So
yes, that is tough. Is visiting only allowed on the Sunday?
No, there are designated visiting hours and days. Right. There are set hours. They're quite extensive. I think they might go for about. I'm not sure whether each prison is different, but from what I know about those two prisons, they have set hours. They have set days. It's not every day of the week.
Yeah.
But clearly, weekends are more better for a lot of people just because of work situations.
Sure.
And they're contact visits. In other words, they get to hug each other and
Yes.
then they're supervised, of course. But
Sure.
as best I know, I haven't been there. That there's a big room and there are tables around, and the inmate is assigned to a table, and you go up and sit with them and talk to them, play cards and chat and do what you like. But the Wisconsin system is, as I understand it, that each inmate is entitled to have 12 people on a visitors list.
Exactly.
And only 12 people are allowed to visit them. That someone can be changed, but when someone comes off and a new person comes on to that list, then that person can't be taken off for a further 6 months. So it avoids the constant switching.
Yes.
So clearly, the people that need to be on the list are those who are capable and able and willing to do regular visiting. Because if you're on the list and you're only there once every blue moon, it would be kind of a waste of a position for someone who might otherwise be able to come more regularly. So,
yeah, absolutely. So I was just going to get back to one of the other questions that you asked me, or that arose, and that was to do with the. You mentioned about the fact that there's 5 times more people in America locked up than anywhere else.
Or 5 times more than Australia and Britain,
yes,
yeah, but nonetheless more than any other country in the world for population.
Yeah.
So,
I remember watching a program a while back, quite a while back, and it dealt with the subject of why are there so many shootings in America? Why are there so many homicides because of shootings? And what they did was, it was a very interesting program because they went through a lot of what we would call the popular theories. Number one being the availability of guns.
Mm-hmm.
But then they pointed out that there are other countries where guns are equally available.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have the same amount of shootings. They said they wondered if it was because America had the death penalty. But again, there are other countries that have the death penalty that have nowhere near the amount of crime that America has. They also considered, this was an interesting one for me, the music scene. You've got some of these sort of rock artists with their quite deranged lyrics and attire and everything, and they talk about going out and shooting people. But they pointed out, well, this music is available to anybody that wants to listen to it.
Yes.
You know, and they were trying to. There's an artist, I believe, called Marilyn Manson, I think his name is, and he's this real comes up with some really strange lyrics. They then suggested, of course, that number one on a lot of people's list is video games, the amount of violent video games. But again, they pointed out that no, there's equal access. There's people playing video games such as your Grand Theft Auto and others. There are people playing those throughout the world. In fact, Grand Theft Auto, my daughter, she used to play it a lot, and she used to often be a part of a gang, and she'd win a shootout, and then she called me in one day and said, Dad, come and look at this. She said, I won this shootout, and now my character, who's a girl, does this fancy dance and everything. And there was all these people commenting on it. You're not a girl. You can't be a girl. You can't be this good, basically, was what they were saying. So, video games, they're suggesting it's that. They then said, well, is it to do with money? But you know what? They actually pinpointed it down to exactly what you were saying. It's this attitude of the Wild West. It's actually, and don't shoot me down for this, it's an American fear. They have this sense of fear that was sort of inbred to them the moment they landed, and they were having to defend themselves against the native Indians. And this is where this sort of almost like lawlessness has stemmed from. And they're still trying to battle against this fear. They would rather shoot first and ask questions later.
Yeah, I it's a complex thing, but I think I would agree with that. And that's not to denigrate the American population, because about a third of people would rather they didn't have guns at all.
Well, Australia gave up guns.
Yes, on the back of a very serious event that happened in 1997, I think it was. I'll come back to that in a moment. But, you know, the gun thing is just, it's so ingrained in the American way of thinking for at least 2/3 of the population anyway. They feel that you would be challenging their cultural values to lessen that. But one of the things I also think contribute, and it's one you mentioned, maybe it's not as significant as I think I have it in my mind, is,
sure,
you know, for a nation that is extremely wealthy and is extremely clever and extremely successful and very supportive around the world, it hasn't been very good at equitably distributing its success over time. So there are many economic tables that show the wealthiest nations in the world per head of population. Now, I should add the caveat to this comment. I'm not saying that money makes you good, but it's a measure of capability. Mm-hmm. And in that top table, number of dollars per head of population, the United States is up there right at the top, right? But then when you apply the wealth of the nation across all its population and see how equitably that wealth is spread, the US barely gets into the top 30. Yeah. Right? Now, equitable distribution comes in the form of many things, not just salaries, but also commitment to things like a good basic wage, education, and affordable education and healthcare system, the environment, social justice issues, all the things that we benefit from being a citizen. That's part of what we call the social wage. Because in the United States, and we're the first one to put my hand up and say that Australia is way far from being perfect, but the degree of poverty that I have seen in the United States compared to the degree of wealth is just astounding. Now, I'm not saying that those solutions are solved overnight, but I think the more equitable you create your society, the less tension there is. There's less need for disruption or dislocation or disownment of community and family. And that doesn't, as I say, change overnight. But I think that's in part, maybe it's not a contributor to what you're saying, maybe it's an outcome of what we're saying. I don't know, but it's certainly something that is very evident for a country I have a lot of respect for, that I think they could have gone a lot further in their success than what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I mean, just to go back on something I said in a video earlier on the week, my one big hope is that because of the attention that Stephen Avery has now been given, because of the fact that it is being reported all around the world, well, certainly very to a very great extent in what we would call the English-speaking countries. But it's going to be a big thing when Stephen is released. That hopefully our children, our children's children, their children, they're going to benefit from the knowledge of, well, we don't want to do that kind of mistake again. And it really is down to the youngsters coming up to decide that they don't want that. As you were saying about the huge incarceration rates, that they're the ones that want to do something about it.
One of the sort of seemingly simplistic things I often hear myself saying is that, I don't know how many people live on planet Earth at the moment. I think it's about 6 or 7 billion people, somewhere of that order. In 100 years from now, all of them will be dead. Right? So the question that should always be in our minds is, what type of planet do we leave behind? Because we're only here for such a short time. We need to be making sure that we leave it in a better state than we found it. And that can be both the physical side of it, that is, the environment, but also things like systems of democracy and justice and so on. I think they're all important parts. And the Stephen and Brendan cases, I mean, I'm a bit of an old fart, right? I've been around a while. I know some stuff, right? But what I've learned from being an active participant in this thing that's enhanced my knowledge and enriched my understanding of the legal processes and what's important and what to be wary of and what to be mindful of has been fabulous. So the legacy from Stephen and Brendan's suffering has had a huge impact on me, and I forever feel fortunate, not to their detriment, but feel fortunate of what I've learned from that. Paul, I wanted to, if I could, while it's on my mind, otherwise I might forget, is just to mention a few things about our Australian supporters.
Yes, please do, because this is the main, our sort of main purpose topic is.
Yes.
As I was saying to you earlier, it's nice to have you at a time that suits you, rather than you were always having to make do with, trying to come in at some weird hours to try and to chat with Eric Osley, because I mean the time difference between you and him is it's virtually
19 hours.
Is it 19 hours? My goodness.
Yeah.
11. Oh, yeah, of course, 11 plus 8, because we're 11 hours apart, and I'm 8 hours ahead of. In fact, we're
and obviously that can flip around by 2 hours when, depending on daylight saving, switching. But yeah, so it's good for Australian people. We do have, as I said right at the beginning, we have this national anthem called Advance Australia Fair. We are a fair society. We're not perfect. We do make mistakes, but we do believe in being fair. It's a big part of the ethos of how we behave, and I think this has resonated in many Australians' minds because of the lack of fairness to this and the injustice that it's imposed on everyday working folk in Wisconsin, which is a beautiful state, and even Manitowoc is a lovely area. And so Australians are they have a huge interest in this case because of what they see as an extreme injustice that they can all relate to. And I wanted to, if I could, just, at the risk of forgetting someone, there are a few people here that I've been fortunate enough to have contact with who've done some really amazing stuff from all the way from down under, in this case, both at many levels. And I'm not even going to describe what they've done because it would be too long. But out of Melbourne, we have Tracy Keogh, who's been a huge advocate for, especially for Brendan and the family and all that's being involved in his case, and obviously intricately woven with Stephen as well. We have a lady who you're aware of and know of, Carol Fitzgerald, who's based out of Sydney, who's like a demon for investigation and understanding the case and the case law and the detail transcripts, and has done some amazing work, including recently work that was acknowledged by Kathleen Zellner to have directly assisted her in what is the current matter she's dealing with. And then people like Pen Muldoon in Newcastle, just north of where I live. Right. And she's just tirelessly been involved in promoting the cause for Stephen and Brendan. And I feel extremely proud to be part of a country that has people like that who have no vested interest other than to do something that's right and fair. And of course, that attitude is mirrored not only across Australia and New Zealand, but all around the world, all across Britain and Europe and so on, and the United States, of course, so, and many other places. So, so it's kind of nice to be part of a community of people who think that what matters most is, taking care of each other, because but for the grace of God, it could be us. So.
Yep. Can you remember that there was a world map that you could pin yourself on? I don't know what happened to that world map. Remember a few years back, that, and you noticed then that was just every continent, obviously, just about every country. I mean, the dude himself, he's got views from nearly 50 different countries. I mean, I'm good at geography. I mean, the dude has no idea that he had no idea there were 50 different countries. He thought the world was the United States, but at least he's learning on that front. But 50 different countries. I think even I would. I mean, I'm reasonably good at geography. That's quite a list, isn't it? 50 different countries.
It is.
Try and it'll be it's certainly every European country. that was
Yeah.
pinned on that map. So I would imagine he's got views from all of those. Obviously, it tends to be the English-speaking countries that take probably the biggest interest. And certainly when I went to Amsterdam, you've been to Amsterdam, there's no problem there. Everybody speaks English. English is their second language.
Well, English has become of necessity the second language for anyone who
Yeah.
doesn't speak English, because from a global sense, the world talks in English. And
Yeah.
so you won't go to any non-English speaking country where English is not part of the curriculum in their schools.
Yeah.
And it's an imperative for most young people to learn and be fluent in another language. But I think, I forget what the numbers are, because they do change a bit from time to time. I think there's about 205 or 202 countries in the world.
Yeah.
In terms of the countries who have the capacity through success and resources to follow something like this, to have around 50 countries who actively participate in a single case out of Manitowoc County, Wisconsin, is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
It's also shown how empowering social media can be, particularly if it's managed correctly. And managing social media is a challenge. Those who aren't aware, the people who work behind the scenes on all the various Facebook pages that manage inquiry and so on do just a sterling job, but it's not easy to do. But the power of it and the bringing together of people through a common cause is a really thrilling thing to be part of.
Yeah.
And feel fortunate to have done that.
Absolutely. The time's pushing on, mate. You're going to miss what was it? Neighbours, Home and Away. Yeah. How is Kylie? How's she doing?
I'm sorry, Paul. I'm sorry. I don't really know much about what Kylie's up to these days, although I think she's still performing as best I know.
Yeah.
But I've never really been a Home and Away watcher. No. I'm proud to say. But the beach that you see in that show is just about half an hour away from where I live.
Yeah.
So at Palm Beach in the northern suburbs of Sydney.
Yeah.
So a beautiful part of Sydney. So.
Yep.
Well, it's been really great to speak with you.
And you.
Can I encourage our Australian and New Zealand watchers tonight, and everyone else, of course, to keep talking about the case, because the more we talk about it, the more people will take interest. Encourage people to go back and watch the earlier Netflix documentary on MAM1 and then 2. Ask questions. I mean, I'm a bit of a tragic. I've watched MAM1 13 times. And you might think, hang on, what's wrong with him? Has he got a life at all? Well, the reason I do is because I always learn something more. And I've watched MAM2, I think, maybe 5 times. And now I'm not suggesting you have to do that, but at least a couple of times would be wise. And because there's obviously a lot of facts to learn, but there's much to learn about justice systems and how they've operated and what they shouldn't be, put it that way. So, so I encourage everyone, and anyone who can and is able to go to the Laura Nyrider, Stephen Drizzen, David Rudolph presentations in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth. Get online. I think there might be a few. I'm not sure about Melbourne and Sydney. There might be a few single tickets around somewhere, but the other venues, there probably are still tickets. So go and see it. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I was certainly here in the UK. I think everywhere they went was either a sellout or virtually a sellout. And certainly when I went to see Dean and Jerry at the Usher Hall, you're talking about a huge theatre that holds 2,200 people. And I would say that there was only around about 200 seats that were spare. There was a big showing for that one. Of course, that was not long after Making a Murderer first came out.
I think Dean and Jerry have been to Australia as well.
They have.
I wasn't really switched on to the whole issue in that early stage. But I think the Penn Muldoon, the lady I mentioned before from Newcastle, she went to see them at the Sydney Opera House, and that main theatre holds 2,800 people. So
Gee,
I'd be surprised if that wasn't a sellout. So
yeah. So it's amazing the impact that it's had, you know, throughout the world.
Yeah,
and it's going to continue. It's going to continue to add. As I say, I would not want to be in Mark Regart's shoes right now.
No.
So
it'd be a bit sweaty. It'd be a bit sweaty in those shoes, don't you?
Yeah. So I won't suggest to him that you've offered to swap places.
No.
Okay. Well,
always great to speak with you, and thank you for taking me on board for tonight's discussion.
No, always great to have. I must admit, I do enjoy these chats with so many different people, but you know, you don't often get the chance to chat with somebody that's the other side of the world from here. You know, it's
hey, can I just add one final
promotion? Absolutely.
It would be remiss of me not to do that for our Australian and New Zealand listeners and viewers. You really should go on to your favorite music store, whether it's Apple or Spotify or whatever, and listen to the music of Stacey Seabrook. He's a young man from Canada. In my view, he's a music philosopher, and his knowledge of the cases of Stephen and Brendan and the way he's turned that into beautiful, powerful music is just breathtaking. So Stacey Seabrook, remember that name and go and listen to some of his music. It's fascinating. And he has a YouTube channel with his music as well. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, because I mean, Kathleen Zellner has tweeted quite a bit about him recently, hasn't she? You know, which is ideal. Yeah, I mean, the thing about Stacey's songs is that that the one certainly about the case, they're very interesting. That the lyrics are very thoughtful. He clearly knows the subject inside and out. And yeah, I often struggle to find a Canadian that I don't like. I can maybe think of one, but you know, that's about it, really. You know, I couldn't possibly, you know, do anything but give praise to Stacey for what he's done, and obviously for your help in promoting him and getting that attention. I remember when I first listened to Don't Get Strange, and sometimes he would do a video and it would be out on YouTube, and there'd be like 7 views of it, you know, a week later, and you're thinking, oh, there needs to be more attention to this. You know, somebody needs to bring this to the attention of the public more. So I think you've done a fantastic job with that. I know that you've put a lot of time and effort into Stacey, and I know that he's very thankful, because he was absolutely thrilled when, as I say, when you appeared next to me, the look on his face.
Yeah.
It's priceless.
Yeah, I mean, I often listen to his music when I'm traveling, you know, either on a train or on a plane. I just put it on in my headphones, and it takes you to another place, and I would encourage others to do likewise. It's very special.
Right, yeah.
All right, enough catering from me, Mr. Capaldi.
Yeah. What's your plans for the weekend then? Got anything exciting to look forward to?
Just some basic around the home stuff, visiting a friend in Sydney.
Right.
Actually down at Palm Beach, where I mentioned a moment ago. Yeah. But generally, I enjoy my weekends to be unplanned. It's just no pressure, and I lead a fairly structured life Monday to Friday. So having an unstructured Saturday and Sunday is good for me. So, yeah.
You maybe got another watch of Making a Murder. Make it number 14. Eh?
Could well be. All right, mate. All the best, and have a great weekend for yourself, and to everyone out there. Please have a great weekend and look after each other.
Yep. Thanks for joining, Mark. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Cheers.
All the best.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye.